All right, so we've got a whole stack of your sources here about ritual magic.
Yeah, quite a collection.
It looks pretty intimidating, to be honest.
I can see that.
But our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to dig through all this stuff and figure out, like, what's actually useful. You know, like the practical stuff. What can we actually use?
Exactly. And how can we apply this to our own lives, make it relevant?
Totally. Okay, well, let's just jump right in then. One thing I see popping up over and over again, especially with beginners, is this thing called the Kabbalistic cross.
Yeah, that's a classic.
But it can be kind of confusing at first, like what is actually happening when you're doing this?
Well, you can think of it as like centering yourself.
Okay.
The tree of life, imagine that as like this big cosmic map of existence.
Right.
And when you do the Kabbalistic cross, you're essentially aligning yourself with like the central axis of that map.
So even if you don't know a ton about Kabbalah, you can still benefit from doing this.
Oh, absolutely. Like before you start cooking,
Uh-huh.
you kind of gather your ingredients and you get everything organized.
Mise en place.
Exactly. So you're setting up your inner space to be receptive to magical energies.
Well, that's a much better way to put it than, like, the magical on switch thing I usually use.
Steal it. All yours.
But there's this fear, I hear this a lot, like, what if you do it wrong?
Right.
Can you mess things up? Is it dangerous?
Honestly, I think it's more likely to be like ineffective than dangerous if you're not really understanding it.
Okay.
You're not summoning anything. It's more about centering yourself.
Right. Okay. Good to know. So we talk about the Kabbalistic cross, which you see a lot with like the Golden Dawn and those traditions.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something maybe a little different, like from the Thalic tradition. Have you ever heard of this Liberesh thing?
Oh, yeah. Liberesh is a solar invocation.
Okay.
And it's performed 4 times a day.
Whoa.
At sunrise, noon, sunset, and midnight.
Wow. Okay.
And each one is a little different, calling on a specific Egyptian god form that's associated with like where the sun is in the sky.
4 times a day.
It's a commitment.
That's intense. What's the benefit of doing it that often?
It's more about like attuning yourself to the rhythm of the sun's energy throughout the day.
Okay.
Like syncing up with that, with the cosmic clock.
Huh. So like if you're super into lunar energy, you could adapt this and do a lunar version of Liberesh.
Yeah, absolutely. You can adapt this for other planets too.
That's really interesting. But realistically, who's got time to do a ritual 4 times a day?
Yeah, that's fair. It's not for everyone. Maybe not the best for a beginner.
Right.
It takes a certain level of dedication,
For sure. Okay, well, let's move on to something that is a little bit, I don't know, more common, I guess.
Okay.
This is one that I think gets thrown around a lot, the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, or as everyone calls it, the LBRP.
Ah, the LBRP, a classic.
Everyone talks about it, but I feel like a lot of people misunderstand what it's for.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of confusion around the LBRP. Like, a lot of people think it's for banishing negative energy.
Right.
But it's actually more specific than that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What it's actually banishing is the element of earth.
Wait, what? Banishing earth? What does that even mean?
So think about it this way, right? Earth represents solidity, stability, the fixed structures of reality.
Okay.
Banishing earth is like making those structures temporarily, like, valuable. Like softening clay or heating iron in a forge.
So you're not like wiping everything away, but making it easier to work with.
Exactly. You're creating the right conditions for magical work. It's not a reset button.
Okay.
It's about, prepping the space.
So it's kind of like what we were saying earlier about the Kabbalistic cross, right? Like it's about preparation.
Absolutely. Both rituals are about creating the optimal inner state for magic.
But what about the negative energy thing? Like if you're feeling weighed down by negativity, does the LBRP help with that?
Okay, well, this is where it gets interesting.
Okay.
The LBRP itself doesn't directly target specific energies, like negativity.
Yeah.
Think of it like this. You have your current reality, right? That includes whatever negativity you're experiencing.
Okay.
And then you have the desired state, the change you're trying to create. The LBRP kind of creates this tension between those two states.
Okay.
And that tension helps propel your magic forward.
Oh, interesting. So it's like using that tension to break through barriers.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Cool. Well, we can't talk about the LBRP without mentioning its counterpart, the lesser invoking ritual of the pentagram, the LIP.
Right.
What's the deal with that one?
So the LIP is all about invoking, right? Where the LBRP banishes earth, the LIP is used to call upon any of the elements.
Gotcha. So if you're doing like a fire ritual, you might do the LBRP first and then the LIP to bring in the fire energy.
Yeah, exactly. Or water magic, you'd invoke water, whatever element you're working with.
Okay. And I'm assuming this doesn't mean you need literal fire in your ritual space, right?
Yeah, no, it's about working with the energy of the element on a subtle level.
Right. Of course, safety first.
Always.
No, some people say that the LAP could be used for like bigger life changes too. If
Mm-hmm.
you're feeling stuck or you want to change direction.
I can see that. I wouldn't say it's like changing your destiny or anything,
Right.
but it can be used to like solidify a desired state or a shift.
Okay.
So let's say you quit smoking, right? Doing the LAP might help like strengthen your result, make it easier to stick with it.
So it's more about reinforcing a change you've already made, not like magically making it happen.
Yeah, more about supporting the work you're already doing.
Okay, that makes sense. And I guess it could work for like breaking bad habits, building good ones.
Absolutely.
Speaking of building, let's move on to the middle pillar ritual. This one seems to be all about working with energy.
Yeah. The middle pillar, it's a really interesting ritual because it works with the chakras, but it maps them onto the tree of life. So you're integrating these two systems.
So you're combining the energy of the chakras with this symbolic framework of the tree of life.
Exactly.
I've always been a bit intimidated by the middle pillar. It seems complicated.
It can seem that way.
Do you think it would be helpful for someone who, let's say, struggles with anxiety?
Oh, for sure. The middle pillar is great for grounding and balancing. Think of it like this. You've just had a really intense workout.
Okay.
Your energy might be kind of scattered, right? The middle pillar helps redistribute that energy in a balanced way, creates calm and stability.
I see.
And it can be especially good for addressing imbalances in specific chakras, which can often manifest as emotional or mental issues.
So someone who's feeling anxious, they could use the middle pillar to work with their solar plexus chakra, which is associated with willpower and confidence.
Yeah, exactly. It's a powerful tool for working with those deeper energetic imbalances that contribute to emotional distress.
I like that analogy of like redistributing energy after a workout
Glad it helps.
makes it easier to understand what's happening during the ritual.
Exactly. We want to make these rituals accessible and understandable so you can experiment, see how they work for you.
Now, before we move on to some of the more, I guess, advanced rituals,
Okay.
I have to ask, have you ever tried mapping the entire tree of life onto your body during the middle pillar instead of just focusing on the chakras?
Ooh, that's an interesting idea.
It just popped into my head.
I haven't personally tried that. I generally stick with the traditional method of focusing on the chakras.
Yeah.
But I can see how that could be powerful connecting with the tree of life on a deeper level.
Yeah, something to experiment with maybe.
For sure.
But let's stick with the tried and true for now. Speaking of which, we have to talk about the Star Ruby and Star Sapphire rituals.
Right.
These seem a little more advanced, not as well known outside of like philemic circles.
Yeah, definitely a step up from the basic rituals.
What makes them so special?
Think of them as like higher vibrational versions of the pentagram and hexagram rituals.
Okay, higher vibrational sounds intriguing, but what does that mean practically?
So they're associated with the supernal triad on the tree of life.
Okay.
Which represents the highest, most refined aspects of divinity. So while the LBRP and other basic rituals work with the foundational energies, the Star Ruby and Star Sapphire tap into a more cosmic level of power.
So like you're working with the big leagues of the tree of life.
Exactly. The macrocosm and microcosm interconnectedness of all things, really potent energy.
Whoa, that's intense. How do they differ from each other, though, the Star Ruby versus the Star Sapphire?
Think of it this way. The Star Ruby is like working with the big dad energy, expansive, creative, active.
Okay.
The Star Sapphire is more like big mom energy, receptive, nurturing, formative.
I love that. Big mom and big dad energies. Would you recommend these for a beginner?
Oh, definitely not. It's like trying to run a marathon before you can walk. Master the basics first. LBRP, LIRP, middle pillar.
Gotcha.
Then you can start exploring the more advanced stuff.
Don't jump in the deep end before you can swim.
Exactly.
Okay, and speaking of diving into deeper waters, let's talk about the last ritual for this section.
Okay.
The Bornless Ritual, also known as the Headless Rite. This one seems a little obscure and honestly a little spooky.
It's definitely got a mysterious vibe to it. It's a precursor to the ritual for invoking the Holy Guardian Angel.
Okay.
And it has roots in ancient traditions like the Greek magical papyri.
Wow, so this ritual has been around for a while.
Crowley even adapted it into his system of magic.
And get this, even the Necronomicon, that fictional book of dark magic, has its own version of the Bornless Ritual.
That's interesting.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's interesting how it's popped up in different contexts throughout history. It seems to tap into something primal.
But the question is, would you ever use it? It seems pretty intense.
I personally haven't worked with the Bornless Ritual.
Okay.
It's powerful, but it also carries a certain level of risk, especially when it comes to invoking the Holy Guardian Angel.
Yeah, that's not something to take lightly.
Not at all. Knowledge, preparation, a healthy dose of respect are essential when dealing with those kinds of forces.
For sure. Makes sense. Don't want to jump in the deep end, right?
Definitely not.
Okay, so we've explored a bunch of rituals here.
Yeah, we have.
Some beginner-friendly, some more advanced.
Mm-hmm.
But I imagine for someone just starting out with ritual magic, it can still feel overwhelming.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, where do you even begin?
My advice would be start with the basics.
Okay.
Master the fundamentals and then build from there.
So what would you consider, like, the essential building blocks, the ones everyone should know?
I think the LBRP and ILIP are great starting point.
Okay.
They're pretty straightforward to learn, but really versatile, really powerful.
Right.
Once you have those down, you can move on to the middle pillar for grounding and balancing,
Uh-huh.
and then gradually work your way up to the more advanced practices like Liberesh or the Star Ruby and Star Sapphire.
Okay, that sounds like a solid progression. But let's talk about actually learning these rituals. I know a lot of people get stuck on the visualization part.
Yeah, that's common.
Any tips for making that easier or more effective?
Absolutely. One technique I find really helpful, especially for the LBRP,
Okay.
is to use physical markers to help with the visualization.
What do you mean?
Like literally map out a pentagram on a wall
Okay.
using push pins, for example,
Okay.
and then practice tracing the lines, with your hand or a wand.
Wait, so you're saying put push pins in the wall and actually draw the pentagram?
Yeah, it sounds simple,
That's brilliant.
but it's really effective.
I've never heard that before.
It takes the guesswork out of the visualization, helps you develop that muscle memory for the gestures. You can do the same with the hexagram for the LRH.
I'm totally trying that.
It makes a huge difference.
Yeah, especially when you're first starting out.
Yeah.
Like learning a dance routine or something. You got to practice the steps physically to really get it.
Exactly. It's about embodying the ritual, not just visualizing it.
And I think it's important to remind people that it's okay if your first attempts feel awkward or, a little clumsy.
Oh, yeah.
No one expects you to be like a master magician overnight.
Right.
A crappy LBRP is better than no LBRP at all, right?
I completely agree. Keep practicing.
And another thing I find super helpful is journaling.
Oh, yeah. Journaling's great.
Just like tracking your progress, noticing any subtle shifts, troubleshooting any challenges.
It's a fantastic tool for any magical practice.
Yeah, you can really start to see how those rituals are affecting you.
Definitely.
It's like having a conversation with your magical self,
Yeah.
You can reflect on your experiences, ask yourself questions, start to notice patterns.
And don't underestimate those small results.
Right.
Sometimes the most profound changes, they happen really gradually.
Yeah.
It's like planting a seed. You don't see it sprout right away.
Right.
But with consistent nurturing, it eventually grows into something amazing.
I love that analogy. It's a good reminder that ritual magic is a process, a journey, not a destination.
Exactly.
Speaking of journey, you mentioned earlier that the LBRP isn't about banishing negativity directly, but it's about creating tension.
Right.
Can you elaborate on that? Like, how can someone use that tension to their advantage?
So think about it this way. You've got the current reality with all its limitations, and then you have your desired reality, the change you want.
Okay.
The LBRP kind of creates this energetic bridge between those two states, this field of potentiality where transformation can occur.
So like stretching a rubber band,
Yeah, like
that tension creates the potential energy for something to snap.
exactly. And the way you direct that energy is through your intention and the specific rituals you choose.
So the LBRP sets the stage, creates the space, and then you use other rituals to kind of shape that energy towards your goals,
Precisely.
like preparing a canvas before you paint.
Exactly.
You need that clear space for your creative vision to emerge.
It all starts with that foundation.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And it highlights the importance of intention too, right?
Absolutely.
It's not enough to just go through the motions.
No.
You have to be clear about what you're actually trying to achieve.
Intention is everything.
Speaking of intention, let's go back to the Star Ruby and Star Sapphire rituals for a sec.
Okay.
You mentioned they work with the supernal triad, which is pretty high-level stuff.
Yeah.
How does that differ from the more, I guess, grounded energies we've been talking about, like the elements or the chakras?
It's a different level of vibration, a different quality of energy.
Okay.
So imagine the lower spheres of the Tree of Life, right? They deal with the building blocks of reality, the stuff that shapes our world, our personalities. The supernal triad represents pure potentiality, like the cosmic blueprint for creation.
So it's like tapping into the source code of the universe.
You could say that. It's an incredibly potent energy, very transformative.
That sounds amazing, but also kind of intimidating.
It can be both.
What kind of results can someone expect from working with these rituals?
It really depends on the individual and their intentions.
Okay.
Some people experience profound spiritual insights,
Wow.
a deeper understanding of their place in the cosmos, or even a sense of union with the divine.
Okay.
Others might find that their creativity is amplified, their intuition gets sharper, or they develop a greater sense of purpose.
That's pretty powerful stuff.
It
But I
is.
imagine there are risks involved too, right? Especially if you're not prepared.
Definitely. Working with these high-level energies can be destabilizing if you're not grounded.
Right.
It's like handling a powerful electrical current. You need to know what you're doing.
So not something to jump into lightly.
No, have a solid foundation in the basics and approach it with respect.
And maybe work with an experienced teacher.
Yeah, a mentor can be really helpful.
Speaking of guidance, I know a lot of people struggle with feeling alone on their magical path.
It's a common challenge.
They're reading books, trying things out, but they don't have anyone to talk to, bounce ideas off of.
Yeah.
Any advice for those folks?
Luckily, there are tons of resources these days, both online and in person.
Yeah, like what?
You've got online forums, social media groups, even local meetups where you can connect with other practitioners.
Right, find your tribe.
Exactly. Community is so important, provides belonging, accountability, inspiration,
It helps you stay motivated.
for sure.
And speaking of motivation, how do you stay inspired? Like what keeps you coming back to these rituals day after day, year after year?
For me, it's curiosity.
Okay.
I'm always learning, exploring, experimenting. Magic is a lifelong journey of discovery, and that sense of wonder keeps me going.
That's beautiful. Always a student.
Always. There's always more to learn, more to discover.
And that brings us back to the Bornless ritual.
Yeah.
You mentioned it's a precursor to the ritual for invoking the Holy Guardian Angel.
hmm
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like, what is the Holy Guardian Angel, and why is it such a big deal in magic?
The Holy Guardian Angel it's a complex concept.
Okay,
In some traditions, it's seen as like a divine messenger,
okay.
a guide, or a higher aspect of the self. In others, it's considered a powerful entity that you can contact and work with.
So not necessarily a literal angel with wings and a halo.
Not necessarily. It's more of an archetype,
Right,
a symbol of our highest potential and our connection to the divine.
I see. But why is invoking it such a big deal in magic?
It's often seen as this pivotal point in a magician's development,
Okay.
a moment of profound transformation, enlightenment.
Hmm.
The idea is by connecting with your holy guardian angel, you gain access to a higher level of wisdom, guidance, and power.
So like leveling up in the magical world.
In a way, yeah,
But I imagine it's not something you just stumble into.
definitely not. It takes a lot of preparation, a lot of dedication.
So if someone is interested in exploring this path, what would you recommend?
I'd say focus on developing a strong foundation in the basics.
Like what?
Meditation, energy work, divination, ritual practice.
So basically everything we've been talking about today.
Exactly. It all contributes to building the skills and awareness you need to safely and effectively navigate the path of magic.
And the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Absolutely. It's about the lesson if you learn, the challenges you overcome.
Right.
It's all part of the process.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
Explored all kinds of rituals, talked about intention, practice, community,
Magic is a journey.
not a destination.
Right.
But you know what? We haven't really talked about the emotional side of ritual magic.
Oh, that's an important one.
People often focus on the techniques, the results.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the feelings? What role do emotions play in all of this? It's a really good point. We've been talking about these rituals like they're recipes or something.
Right.
But there's this whole human element we haven't really talked about.
Yeah, for sure.
What's your take on like the emotional side of things?
I think it's essential. You can't really separate ritual from emotion.
Mhm.
In fact, I'd say emotions are often the fuel, that powers the magic.
Oh, interesting.
Think about why we even perform rituals in the first place.
Right.
We're seeking something. Change, healing, connection, empowerment.
Yeah.
And those desires, they're rooted in emotion.
So if you're not emotionally invested in the ritual, it's less likely to be effective.
Exactly. If you're just going through the motions without any real feeling behind it,
Uh-huh.
it's like trying to start a fire with damn wood. You need that spark.
Okay.
You need that intensity to get things going.
That makes sense. But emotions can be tricky too, right?
Oh, yeah,
Sometimes they feel overwhelming or like they get in the way.
for sure.
How do you navigate that in your own practice?
It's about awareness and self-regulation,
Okay.
not suppressing emotions, but learning to work with them constructively.
Hmm.
So let's say you're feeling angry. You could channel that energy into a ritual for protection or banishing.
Right. So like use it as fuel.
Exactly. If you're feeling joyful, you could use that energy to manifest abundance or creativity. It depends.
So it's more about like using your emotions as a source of power.
Yeah,
rather than letting them control you.
exactly. You're the master of your emotion landscape, not getting tossed around by the waves.
Love that. It reminds me of what we were talking about earlier, grounding and balancing.
Yeah, good point.
Seems like those are essential, not just for working with energy,
Right.
but for managing emotions too.
Absolutely. Grounding helps you stay rooted even when things get intense.
Okay.
And balancing helps you maintain that harmony so you don't swing too far in one direction.
Right, right. So let's say someone's feeling really drawn to a particular ritual,
Okay.
but they're also feeling apprehensive or even scared.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give them?
I'd say listen to your intuition.
Okay.
If you're hesitant, there's probably a reason. Maybe you need to do more research.
Right.
Or address some underlying fears or anxieties before jumping in.
Don't ignore those feelings.
Exactly.
Explore them, see what they're trying to tell you.
Fear can be a valuable teacher.
I like that.
If you're willing to listen, you know?
Yeah. Okay, so you've decided to try a ritual.
Yeah.
You've done your research, you've set your intention, you're feeling grounded, you're feeling balanced.
Good.
What happens next? Like, what does it actually feel like to perform a ritual?
That's a tough question to answer in words.
Oh, I bet.
It's so subjective, you know?
Yeah.
It can depend on the ritual, your energy, the environment.
I get it.
But I can share some common experiences people report.
Please do. I'm always curious about this stuff.
Okay, so some people describe feeling a shift in energy, a tingling sensation, a sense of warmth or pressure.
Okay.
Others might see colors or images,
Wow.
hear sounds, or even have visions.
Okay.
Some people just feel a deep sense of peace or connection or empowerment.
So it's not always about fireworks and crazy visions.
Right.
Sometimes it's more subtle.
Exactly. Just pay attention to your experience.
Okay.
Notice the shifts, the sensations. Trust your intuition.
It's easy to get caught up in what we think should be happening
Yeah, that's true.
instead of just being present and observing.
Be present, and don't get discouraged if you don't experience something dramatic right away.
Right.
It takes time, you know?
It's a practice.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say you've been practicing for a while. You're feeling good. You're seeing some results.
Okay.
But then you hit a plateau.
Happens to everyone.
You know, the magic fizzles out. You lose motivation.
Yeah.
What do you do when you hit that wall?
Sometimes you need to shake things up.
Okay.
Try something new, or even just take a break.
Mm.
You can't be on all the time.
So it's okay to take a break from ritual if you're feeling burnt out.
Definitely. Stepping away can give you a fresh perspective.
Yeah, makes sense.
And when you come back, you'll have renewed enthusiasm.
What about trying new things? How do you keep your practice fresh?
That's where exploration comes in.
Right.
Experimentation.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone.
Mm.
Try different rituals, different energies, new tools and techniques.
So be a lifelong student, always learning, growing.
Exactly. Magic is a path of constant discovery, and that's what keeps it so exciting.
I love that. Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Yeah.
We've covered so much in this deep dive.
We have
Rituals, emotions,
a
experiences.
little bit of everything.
Hopefully we've inspired you to start your own journey of magical discovery.
That's the goal.
The real magic begins when you take this knowledge.
And make it your own.
Exactly. Experiment, explore,
Most importantly, listen to your intuition
trust your inner guidance, embrace the mystery.
and let yourself be transformed by the magic.
Beautifully said. Until next time, may your journey be filled with wonder, discovery,
And a little bit of magic.
absolutely.